Iran Daily Briefing, Saturday, May 9th, 2026. Iran's foreign ministry today condemned US strikes on 2 Iranian oil tankers near the Strait of Hormuz, calling the attacks illegal. At the same time, Washington says those vessels were attempting to violate an ongoing US blockade. Both governments are still publicly calling the ceasefire intact. That contradiction, active strikes on one hand and active ceasefire on the other, is the central tension running through everything we'll cover today. As we've covered across the past several days, the ceasefire declared in early April has been under sustained pressure. Yesterday's episode traced how both Washington and Tehran were maintaining the ceasefire was in effect even as fire exchanges occurred in the strait. That core contradiction was unresolved yesterday, and today's reporting deepens it rather than resolving it. What's new today? Iran's foreign ministry has formally condemned US strikes on 2 of its tankers. Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesman Esmail Baghaei has publicly challenged Washington's diplomatic posture. There is fresh reporting on a UN Security Council resolution targeting Iran's blockade, and Russia is now a named actor in that fight. And separately, a 1-page framework document is reportedly under review in Tehran. Here is what you'll hear in today's episode. The tanker strikes and Tehran's response, the UN resolution and Russia's position, the internal review process for a US proposal, and what to watch for in the next 24 to 48 hours. The clearest development today is this. Iran's Ministry of Foreign Affairs has strongly condemned what it describes as attacks by US military forces against 2 Iranian oil tankers near the port of Jask and the Strait of Hormuz. That condemnation comes from Mehr news agency and IRNA, both Iranian state outlets. 2 sources reporting the same statement. US Central Command tells a different story. According to Al Monitor, CENTCOM struck 2 empty Iranian-flagged oil tankers on Friday, May 8th, stating they were seeking to violate the ongoing US blockade. Al Monitor is the sole source for that specific framing from CENTCOM. The Pentagon released footage of the strikes, according to Al Jazeera, again a single source. So here is where things stand on the tanker question. Tehran says its vessels were attacked illegally. Washington says the vessels were attempting to breach a blockade. Neither account addresses the other's framing directly. That is worth sitting with. 2 governments describing the same military event in ways that don't simply conflict, but talk past each other entirely. This connects directly to a 3rd vessel. Al Monitor also reports that US forces disabled a separate Iranian-flagged tanker on Wednesday, May 6th. That's 3 days ago. That is also a single-source claim, and there is a broader environmental dimension to this. France 24 reports that satellite images show a large oil spill spreading off Iran's Kharg island, which France 24 describes as a critical oil hub terminal for Iran. That is a single-source report. It has not been confirmed by additional outlets in today's intel. Now to Baghaei's statement, which goes beyond the tanker condemnation. On May 9th, Iran's foreign ministry spokesman said publicly that the Trump administration's simultaneous claims of pursuing a nuclear solution while issuing threats of a nuclear attack amount to what he called a grotesque absurdity. That statement was made publicly, according to Mehr news agency and Iranian. 2 sources. The broader military picture from France 24. President Trump ordered retaliatory strikes against Iran following attacks on US Navy destroyers, then downplayed the hostilities and said the ceasefire still stands. The United Arab Emirates separately said it responded to fresh missile and drone attacks by Iran on Friday. Both of these are single-source reports from France 24. NPR independently reports that 3 US Navy destroyers in the Strait of Hormuz were targeted by Iran, and that US forces fired on 2 Iranian oil tankers following that exchange. What to watch for? Whether US Central Command or the Iranian Foreign Ministry issues any further statement that clarifies, in either direction, whether the tanker strikes represent a new phase of operations or fall within the existing ceasefire framework as either side defines it. Story 1. The UN Security Council Resolution. At the United Nations, a resolution sponsored by the United States and Bahrain is calling on Iran to end its blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. Here is where the diplomatic lines are being drawn. Russia's Deputy Foreign Minister Alexander Alimov has said Moscow cannot support the US-Bahrain draft resolution. Russia has also urged the United States and Bahrain to withdraw it entirely. Both of those positions come from Middle East Eye, a single source. On the other side of the ledger, the UN has confirmed the resolution has support from Kuwait, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates, according to Middle East Eye. Again, single source. That creates a Security Council dynamic worth tracking. Russia's opposition is structurally significant. As a permanent member, Moscow holds veto power. Middle East Eye is the sole outlet reporting Russia's stated position today. Separately, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov told UAE Foreign Minister Sheikh Abdullah bin Zayed Al Nahyan on Friday, May 8th, that US-Iran negotiations needed to be supported to prevent a resumption of hostilities, according to Al Monitor, a single source. What to watch for? Whether Russia formalizes its opposition to the US-Bahrain resolution with a veto threat, and whether any of the 4 Gulf states listed as supporters, Kuwait, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, issue their own public statements on the resolution. Story 2. The one-page framework. France 24 is reporting, as a single source, that a 14-point one-page memorandum of understanding crafted by Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner was sent to Pakistani mediators and is currently being reviewed by Iran. This connects directly to what we covered earlier this week regarding the Pakistan channel. The document itself, its 14 points, its one-page format, is new detail today. The internal review process is also described in today's intel. Middle East Eye, citing Al Jazeera reporting, describes a process that involves parliamentary leaders including Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf, the IRGC, Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the Supreme National Security Council, and ultimately Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei. To be precise about the sourcing, the review process is described by Middle East Eye, which cites Al Jazeera reporting. That is a single outlet citing another outlet. Treat it accordingly. Separately, Iran's domestic political environment around the proposal is being actively managed. Hassan Rissouli, a member of Iran's Reformists' Supreme Council for Policymaking, described Trump's efforts to create divisions among Iranian officials as psychological warfare, according to Iran's state news agency IRNA, as reported by Middle East Eye. What to watch for? Any statement from Ghalibaf, the Supreme National Security Council, or the Foreign Ministry that signals where Iran's internal review of the Witkoff-Kushner document stands. Story 3. Shahed drone sanctions. On May 8th, the US Treasury announced sanctions against 10 individuals and companies, including several in China and Hong Kong, for allegedly aiding Iran's military in securing weapons and raw materials used to build Shahed drones. That is according to Al Monitor, the sole source. This connects to a thread we have been tracking since early May regarding sanctions targeting Iran's drone supply chain. The China and Hong Kong dimension is consistent with prior designations in this series. Also, in today's intel, China's aluminium exports rose 15% in April 2026 compared to the same month last year, reaching 598,000 metric tons, according to customs data cited by Reuters, as reported by Middle East Eye. China's total aluminium shipments for the year to April reached 2.05 million tons, also per Middle East Eye. These figures are reported without direct connection to the Shahed sanctions in the source material. The proximity is in the intel package, not an established editorial link, so we note both without drawing a conclusion between them. What to watch for? Whether any of the newly sanctioned individuals or companies contest the designations, and whether China's foreign ministry issues a response to the Treasury action, given Beijing's prior pattern on sanctions designations in this series. We open today with the central contradiction. Both governments calling the ceasefire intact while strikes on Iranian tankers were underway. Here is the fuller picture, using only what today's sources report. The US says the tankers were attempting to violate its blockade. Iran says the attacks were illegal. Trump ordered retaliatory strikes after US Navy destroyers were targeted, then said the ceasefire still stands, according to France 24. On May 1st, 8 days ago, Trump sent letters to congressional leaders declaring that hostilities with Iran have terminated, according to Fox News. The ceasefire itself was imposed on April 7th, also according to Fox News. What today's reporting adds: a formal foreign ministry condemnation from Tehran, Pentagon footage of the strikes per Al Jazeera, and a reported oil spill off Kharg Island per France 24. The contradiction identified yesterday has not closed. It now has additional source detail on both sides. That is where things stand as of Saturday, May 9th. 3 things to watch in the next 24 to 48 hours. 1. The tanker strike response. Iran's foreign ministry condemnation is on the record. Watch for any follow-on action, a formal diplomatic protest, a UN filing, or a military statement from Tehran's side that goes beyond the condemnation already issued. Also, watch for any additional US Central Command statement clarifying the rules of engagement around Iranian-flagged vessels and the blockade. 2. The UN Security Council resolution. Russia has stated it cannot support the US-Bahrain draft. Watch for any procedural move, a vote call, a formal withdrawal request, or a Russian veto threat that advances or stalls the resolution. Watch also for any statement from the 4 Gulf states listed as supporters. 3. The Witkoff-Kushner framework. The one-page document is reportedly in Iran's review process, which, according to Middle East Eye, citing Al Jazeera, runs through Ghalibaf, the IRGC, the Supreme National Security Council, and Khamenei. Watch for any signal from any of those actors, a public statement, a briefing to state media, or a formal response through the Pakistan channel that indicates where that review stands. Today's episode covered Iran's formal condemnation of US tanker strikes near Jask and the Strait of Hormuz, the competing US account of those strikes, a satellite-reported oil spill off Kharg Island, Russia's opposition to a US-Bahrain UN Security Council resolution on Iran's blockade, a single-source report on a one-page US framework document under review in Tehran, and new Treasury sanctions targeting the Shahed drone supply chain. We'll be back tomorrow with any developments that break overnight. For full written briefs and source-backed updates, check out the Iran Brief on Substack. Paid members can build multi-country monitoring across the countries they care about, with personalized briefings delivered automatically.